I want you to picture this. You're sitting at like this incredibly gorgeous luxury wedding.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you're in your suit or maybe a fancy gown, right? And right in the middle of the table is this massive multi-tiered seafood tower.
The ultimate centerpiece.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking glistening lobster claws, these pristine oysters, colossal shrimp on a mountain of crushed ice.
Sounds expensive.
Right. And you probably assume that the $200 price tag for that thing is for the chef's culinary genius.
Well, I mean, that's what most people think, yeah.
But the crazy thing is, you aren't paying for a recipe at all.
No, not even close.
You are actually paying for this massive, invisible, basically a high-stakes logistical race against time called the cold chain.
Right, the cold chain.
Yeah, you're paying for the sheer physics of keeping this ocean creature perfectly chilled from the exact second it leaves the freezing Atlantic to the moment it hits your plate.
It is honestly an exercise in complete logistical perfection. Because the irony of this, like, ultimate luxury culinary centerpiece is that the chef's primary job is to do absolutely nothing to the food.
Nothing at all.
Right. Instead, they just manage the environment around it. You're really buying time, temperature, and geography.
And that is exactly what we're deconstructing today.
Yes, we are.
So for you listening, whether you're a food nerd obsessed with regional cuisine, or maybe you're in the trenches trying to plan a massive event.
Which is stressful.
Oh, incredibly. But we are taking a deep dive into the absolute peak of New England coastal cuisine today.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. We're unpacking the legendary lobster roll and its towering, extravagant cousin, the luxury seafood tower.
Right.
We're going to look at the biology of why this food tastes the way it does, the chemistry of how to pair it.
And the absolute logistical gauntlet of pulling it off.
Yes, especially if you're looking at resources like the Weddizer website.
Oh, yeah. Weddizer is huge for this.
It really is. It's heavily utilized for food and drinks purposes, especially their articles section.
All right, they have great stuff.
They give the best hiring guidance for these high-end wedding events. And you need that guidance because, I mean, pulling this off at scale, say, for a 200-person wedding is terrifying if you don't know what you're doing.
It's a caterer's nightmare if they aren't prepared.
Absolutely. So the goal of this deep dive is to give you the underlying mechanics of this food.
We want to explain not just what a lobster roll or a seafood tower is, but, the precise biological and cultural reasons why they sit at the absolute pinnacle of luxury dining.
And it really is the pinnacle. But I want to start right at the foundation.
Okay, we'll do it.
Because before a caterer ever touches a knife, before you ever even consult a vendor guide on Weddizer, the heavy lifting has actually already been done by the environment.
Yes, by the ocean itself.
Right. We're talking about New England coast, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and specifically the water.
The freezing cold water.
Yeah. Because I always kind of assumed that a lobster is a lobster, right?
Yes.
Whether you pull it out of the warm Caribbean or the freezing coast of Maine.
A lot of people think that, yeah.
But the underlying biology completely contradicts that. The temperature of the Atlantic Ocean is, like, fundamentally altering the cellular structure of the catch.
It really is the defining variable. The cold Atlantic water isn't just a pretty scenic backdrop.
Right.
It is an active biological stressor. It forces the sea life to adapt in ways that are honestly highly beneficial to our palates.
Okay, break that down for me. What is the actual mechanism there?
So when the water temperature drops toward freezing, a lobster's metabolism slows down significantly.
Okay.
In warm water, lobsters grow very quickly, but rapid growth leads to meat that can be, well, stringy.
Stringy and mushy, right?
Yeah, mushy and relatively flavorless.
Because they're just rapidly expanding without developing any real density.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, the growth rate just plummets.
Wow.
I mean, it takes a Maine lobster up to 7 years to reach a legal harvesting size of just 1 pound.
Wait, really? 7 years for 1 pound?
7 years. It's an incredibly slow process.
Yeah. That's wild. I had no idea it took that long.
Yeah, and during that prolonged slow growth period in freezing temperatures, the lobster's body is doing 2 very specific things.
Okay, what's the first?
First, it's developing incredibly dense, firm muscle fibers.
So there's no structural flappiness.
Right, none at all.
Yeah.
And second, and this is the most important part for flavor, to survive that cold, the lobster has to store energy.
Okay.
And it stores that energy in the form of glycogen.
Glycogen. Okay, walk me through the chemistry of that. Why do I, as the person eating the lobster, care about its energy reserves?
Well, because glycogen is a complex carbohydrate. It's a polysaccharide.
Oh, okay, sugar.
Exactly. When you cook that lobster meat, that stored glycogen breaks down into simpler sugars.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right. That is the exact mechanism that delivers that signature profound sweetness you experience when you bite into cold water seafood.
That is fascinating.
It really is. The harshness of the freezing environment literally forces the animal to pack its muscles full of natural sugars.
Oh.
Warm water lobsters simply do not have that same glycogen density, which is why they taste so bland by comparison.
So the freezing water is essentially like a multi-year marinade.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
The environment is doing the seasoning for us.
Exactly.
And this ties directly into the economic reality of the region too, doesn't it? I mean, this isn't a factory farm situation.
Not at all.
You can't just speed up a 7-year growth cycle in the open ocean.
You really can't, which is exactly why the New England coastal economy is built entirely around protecting that ecosystem.
Right, the sustainability aspect.
Yes, the sustainable fishing practices we see up and down the coast, the strict catch limits, throwing back egg-bearing females, enforcing size requirements.
It's not just environmental idealism, right?
No, it's sheer economic self-preservation.
Right.
These local communities understand that the incredibly high value of their export is directly tied to the pristine nature of those freezing waters.
Makes total sense.
If you overfish or degrade the habitat, you lose the glycogen-rich density that makes the Maine lobster command top dollar globally.
Yeah, you're ruining your own product.
Exactly.
So if the ingredient has spent 7 years naturally developing this dense, sweet, perfectly balanced flavor profile in the freezing ocean,
Yeah.
it totally makes sense why the overriding culinary philosophy in New England is so strict. It's this ethos of intense minimalism.
Minimal seasoning, maximum freshness.
Right.
It's culinary restraint, which, is actually much harder for a chef to execute than culinary complexity.
Okay, I'm going to push back on that, though.
Okay, go for it.
If a dish has barely any seasoning, if a chef is just steaming a lobster and handing it to me, why is that considered the height of luxury?
That's a fair question.
Because when we look at the high-end catering world, or if you're browsing Weddizer for a premium wedding menu, you are paying top dollar.
Oh, absolute top dollar.
Aren't we conditioned to believe that luxury dining means complex manipulation?
Usually, yes.
Right. I want a 20-ingredient sauce, I want a foam, I want a reduction that took 3 days to make. If I'm paying premium prices, shouldn't the chef be doing more than just boiling water?
It's a very natural assumption to make. But it really misunderstands the definition of value in this specific context.
How so?
Well, in classical French cuisine, for example, the value absolutely comes from the chef's technique.
Like braising something for days.
Exactly. The ability to take a tough cut of meat and transform it through a complex multi-day braise and a heavily mounted butter sauce. In that scenario, the chef is the star.
Right.
But with New England coastal cuisine, the ocean is the star. True luxury here is defined by unadulterated quality.
Unadulterated quality, meaning the lack of interference is the proof of the product's worth.
Precisely. Think of it like a flawless diamond.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. You don't take a flawless, decolor, internally flawless diamond and coat it in colorful enamel to make it look better.
No, you'd ruin it.
Exactly. You put it in a minimal setting to let the natural perfection catch the light. When an ingredient is as pristine as a cold water Atlantic lobster, packed with that naturally developed glycogen sweetness and dense muscular texture, adding a heavy, complex sauce doesn't elevate it.
It masks it.
It completely ruins the value proposition. The simplicity is the flex.
The simplicity is the flex. I love that.
The chef is confidently stating, this ingredient is so structurally perfect that doing anything more to it would be a culinary crime.
Wow.
So simple cooking techniques like a quick steam or a raw preparation are ruthlessly deployed just to protect the biology we just talked about.
So if you cover it in a rich béarnaise sauce, you might as well have bought the cheaper warm water lobster because you wouldn't taste the difference anyway.
You'd be throwing your money away.
Okay, so if minimal intervention is the golden rule, the ultimate laboratory test for this philosophy is the undisputed heavyweight champion of New England cuisine.
The lobster roll.
Yes, the lobster roll.
It is the quintessential expression of what we can call accessible luxury.
Accessible luxury. I like that. Now, I know you listening already know what a lobster roll is.
Right. We don't need to define a sandwich.
Exactly. But what we do need to unpack is the absolute blood feud between the two distinct fiercely defended styles.
Oh, it gets heated.
It really does. Maine style and Connecticut style.
Yeah.
Because the contrast between these two approaches perfectly illustrates the science of flavor delivery and texture. So let's break down the divide.
Let's do it. It is one of the great regional culinary debates.
Start us off with Maine style.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of the Maine style first. The defining characteristic of a Maine lobster roll is that the lobster meat is served cold.
Cold meat, got it.
Right. And it's lightly dressed with mayonnaise, usually mixed with finely diced celery.
And maybe a little lemon.
Yeah, a touch of lemon juice or maybe a subtle herb like chives.
So you have this chilled, creamy, crunchy profile.
Exactly.
And then you drive a few hours south and you hit Connecticut style.
Right, and the paradigm completely shifts. In Connecticut, the lobster meat is served warm.
No mayo.
No mayonnaise at all. There's no celery. The warm chunks of lobster are simply bathed in melted, usually clarified, butter.
Let's get into the sensory science of why these two completely different approaches both work so brilliantly.
Because they really do both work.
Yeah, and eating them creates entirely different physical experiences in the mouth.
It comes down to how fats interact with temperature and our taste receptors.
Okay, nerd out on this for me.
Let's analyze the Maine style first. Mayonnaise is an emulsion. It's oil suspended in water, stabilized by the lecithin in egg yolks.
Right.
Because it's an emulsion, it has a distinct creaminess, but it doesn't coat the palate the same way pure liquid fat does.
Okay.
When you serve the lobster cold, the meat's texture is firmer, more pronounced. The mayonnaise provides a rich binder, while the cold, crisp celery introduces an aggressive textural contrast.
Oh, that makes sense.
The snap of the celery highlights the tender, yielding bite of the cold lobster meat.
It's a very bright experience then. It feels refreshing.
Yes, exactly. The slight acidity usually present in the mayo or added lemon juice really brightens the cold, sweet meat.
Okay, so that's Maine. Now contrast that with the physics of the Connecticut style.
Right. Here you are using clarified butter, which is pure milk fat.
Pure fat.
When you serve the lobster warm, the muscle fibers relax slightly. They become more tender.
Okay.
The warm, pure fat of the butter seeps into all the little crevices of the meat. And here's the science. Warm temperatures actually increase the volatility of flavor compounds.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they release more aroma into your olfactory system as you eat.
So the warm butter is literally vaporizing the flavor into your nasal passages as you chew.
Exactly. It amplifies the savory, rich notes of the lobster. A Connecticut roll is decadent, savory, and melt-in-your-mouth tender.
Whereas a Maine roll is bright, crisp, and refreshing.
You've got it.
But regardless of the style, whether you are team cold and creamy or team warm and buttery, there is one architectural constant that we have to talk about.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
The unsung hero of the entire operation, the split-top bun.
Yes.
I always used to think, why are we romanticizing a hot dog bun?
A lot of people think it's just a normal bun.
But this isn't just any piece of bread. The engineering behind the split-top bun is critical to the delivery of the lobster.
It is a structural necessity.
Rub it down.
The traditional New England split-top bun is unique because the sides are completely flat and crustless. They are baked, touching each other in a specialized pan, and then torn apart.
And the history of that is actually fascinating.
It really is.
That bun was originally invented for the Howard Johnson's restaurant chain,
Right.
specifically because they wanted a bun that would stand upright on its own in a little cardboard sleeve without tipping over and spilling the contents.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, it was an industrial design solution that accidentally became a culinary icon.
And that industrial design is exactly why it works perfectly for a lobster roll.
Why is that?
Well, because the sides are flat and crustless, exposing the soft crumb of the bread, they provide the maximum possible surface area for buttering and grilling.
Oh, so you get an even toast.
Exactly. When you press those buttered flat sides onto a hot griddle, you trigger a massive Maillard reaction.
And just to clarify, the Maillard reaction being the chemical process where proteins and sugars in the bread react to heat, right?
Right.
Creating that beautiful golden brown toasted crust and that deeply savory flavor.
Precisely. So you end up with a bun that is incredibly soft and pillowy on the inside, but has this sturdy, aggressively toasted, butter-crisped armor on the outside.
And that's crucial, isn't it?
It is crucial for the structural integrity of the sandwich. If you use a normal rounded hot dog bun with a soft exterior, the moisture from the mayonnaise or the melted butter would immediately turn the bread into a soggy, disintegrating mess.
Nobody wants a soggy bun.
No, it ruins the experience. The toasted flat sides of the split-top bun create a moisture barrier. It holds a generous, heavy portion of lobster meat perfectly, providing a warm, crisp crunch that contrasts beautifully with both the chilled Maine filling and the warm Connecticut filling.
It's just an engineering marvel.
It really is.
It takes an incredibly premium ingredient, bursting with this glycogen-fueled sweetness, and packages it in the most unpretentious handheld vessel imaginable.
That is the definition of accessible luxury.
Exactly. It strips away the white tablecloths and the silver forks, but preserves 100% of the quality.
But here's the pivot.
Right.
The lobster roll is the perfect individual experience. It's what you eat sitting on the dock at a seaside shack.
Yeah, just you and a paper plate.
But what happens when you need to scale this philosophy up?
This is the big question.
What happens when you are a bride, a groom, or an event planner staring at the Weddizer website, trying to figure out how to feed 200 guests at a luxury coastal-themed wedding?
Right, you can't just hand everyone a hot dog bun no matter how perfectly toasted it is.
Exactly. You have to elevate the presentation to match the formality of the event without losing the fundamental ethos of the raw, unadulterated ingredient.
And the solution to that logistical puzzle is the absolute showstopper.
The seafood tower.
Yes, the towering, multi-tiered platter of chilled seafood glistening on a mountain of crushed ice.
It's beautiful.
If you look at the vendor and catering articles on Weddizer, these towers are totally dominating the high-end event space.
They really are.
They're basically replacing the massive floral centerpieces. But it's not just a random pile of expensive seafood thrown onto some ice.
No, absolutely not.
There's an absolute architecture to it. So let's deconstruct the tiers, because it is a carefully curated ecosystem of flavors.
It is highly deliberate. The arrangement is specifically designed to guide the palate.
Okay, take us through it.
Typically, there are 2 to 3 tiers. Let's look at the foundational components. The anchor, sitting proudly at the top or featured prominently, is almost always the lobster.
Because it's the king.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've established why it is the undisputed king of the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
Its dense, sweet meat sets the luxury standard for the entire structure.
Okay. And then scattered throughout, usually dominating the bottom tier, you have the oysters.
Right.
Served raw, on the half shell, resting directly in the ice.
Now, oysters serve a very specific physiological function on a seafood tower.
Which is?
They act as the ultimate palate cleansers.
Because of the brine.
Because of the brine, the minerality, and what we call miroir.
Miroir. Wait, like terroir in wine.
Exactly. It's the marine equivalent. An oyster filters gallons of water a day.
Oh, wow.
So its entire flavor profile is dictated by the specific cove or inlet it grew in.
That makes total sense.
When you eat a raw oyster, you are getting a hyper-concentrated, immediate hit of cold, clean ocean water. It is a shock to the sensory system that resets your taste buds.
It wakes your mouth right up.
It really does.
Then, moving up the tower, you typically find the crab. Usually king or snow crab legs, expertly split so the meat is accessible.
Right, and crab introduces a completely different texture and flavor profile.
How so?
Well, while lobster is dense and firm, crab meat is incredibly delicate. It's almost flaky.
Yeah, that's true.
It has a pronounced, profound sweetness that is much lighter than the rich density of lobster. Crab is the component on the tower that responds best to sharp, citrus-based interventions.
Like lemon?
A squeeze of fresh lemon completely illuminates the flavor of cold crab meat.
I love that. And then the glue that holds the whole tower together for the masses, the jumbo shrimp cocktail.
Yes.
Every vendor guide on Weddizer will tell you that you cannot omit the shrimp.
You really can't.
Because it's just the universal crowd favorite.
It provides essential accessibility. Think about it. Raw oysters can be intimidating for some guests.
Oh, absolutely.
And picking meat out of a crab leg requires a bit of effort.
Mm-hmm.
But a perfectly poached, chilled jumbo shrimp is familiar.
It's safe.
It's safe. It has a wonderfully firm, satisfying snap when you bite into it, and its mild flavor acts as the perfect canvas for a zesty cocktail sauce. It ensures that every single guest, regardless of their culinary adventurism, can engage with the tower.
Okay, so rounding at the bottom, you might have some chilled clams or mussels on the half shell, adding a bit more textural variety.
Exactly.
But here's the question that always bothers me when I see these things at formal events.
Let's hear it.
The Weddizer articles push these towers for high-end weddings, right?
They do.
But if I'm wearing a custom tuxedo, or a bride is in a $10,000 silk gown, How are we supposed to eat from a dripping mountain of ice and shells without looking like barbarians?
That's a very fair point.
I mean, isn't a seafood tower essentially just a really fancy, chaotic buffet?
It's a legitimate fear, but this is where the deliberate engineering of the tower comes into play.
Okay.
When top-tier event planners and caterers build these, they are designing them for clean, elegant consumption.
How?
First, the vertical, multi-tiered structure naturally segregates the components. You aren't digging through a messy pile. You're selecting a distinct item from a specific shelf.
Okay, that helps.
Second, the crushed ice is crucial. It doesn't just keep the food cold, it locks the shells in place. It prevents sliding and shifting.
Oh, so it's a structural foundation, not just a cooler.
Exactly. Furthermore, a properly executed tower does all the messy work in the kitchen.
Meaning the caterer preps it all.
Yes. The crab legs are pre-scored or split. The lobster claws are cracked, and the knuckles are exposed. The oysters are perfectly shucked, their adductor muscles severed so the meat slides out effortlessly.
So you shouldn't be wrestling with a nutcracker at the table.
Never. At a luxury event, if a guest has to struggle to extract the meat, the caterer has failed.
That is such a good point.
And the final piece of the elegance equation is the highly curated sauces.
Right, the sauce.
You aren't slathering things on your plate. You have a sharp vinegar and shallot mignonette for the oysters.
Sounds amazing.
A horseradish-heavy cocktail sauce for the shrimp, maybe a tarragon aioli. A guest uses a tiny cocktail fork, selects a pristine piece of meat, adds a microscopic drop of an intensely flavored sauce, and eats it cleanly in one bite.
Wow, so it's precision eating.
It is. It's incredibly refined.
And beyond the logistics, the reason platforms like Weddizer heavily feature these towers is the visual and psychological impact.
Oh, the impact is huge.
Right. A towering architectural centerpiece of ice and bright red crustacean shells physically draws people in.
Yes. It forces engagement.
It forces guests to stand up, lean in, and interact. It sparks conversation. It creates a communal, interactive dining experience that a standard, passive-plated dinner of, like chicken or steak, simply cannot replicate.
Exactly.
It's an icebreaker, literally and metaphorically.
Literally. I love that.
But, you know, a masterpiece centerpiece is only as good as the supporting cast surrounding it.
Sure.
You can't just eat a pound of cold seafood in a vacuum. Let's look at the culinary ecosystem, the drinks, the sides, the complete menu that actually elevates this experience from good to unforgettable.
It's so important.
Because the chemistry of pairing food with cold water seafood is very specific.
It is highly intentional, and it is all about manipulating the palate to prevent fatigue.
Palate fatigue. Okay, let's start with the beverage pairings.
Sure.
The universal recommendations are crisp white wines, specifically Sauvignon Blanc or an unoaked Chardonnay,
Right.
sparkling wine or champagne, light, crisp craft beers like a Pilsner or a Kolsch, and for a non-alcoholic route, sharply carbonated, lemon-infused sparkling water.
Perfect lineup.
But walk me through the chemical why. Why do these specific drinks work so well, while a heavy red wine or a dark stout would completely ruin the meal?
It comes down to two specific mechanisms: acidity and effervescence.
Okay.
Let's take the lobster roll, for instance. Whether it's the mayo-heavy Maine style or the butter-soaked Connecticut style, you are dealing with a massive payload of fat and rich protein.
Oh, definitely.
As you eat, those lipids coat your tongue and your taste buds. If you don't clear that coating away, every subsequent bite tastes a little duller, a little heavier. This is palate fatigue.
Your mouth literally gets tired of the richness.
Exactly. Enter a crisp Sauvignon Blanc. It is packed with bright, sharp malic and tartaric acidity. That acidity acts like a chemical knife.
A chemical knife?
Yeah, it slices straight through the lipid layer on your tongue, completely dissolving the fat and resetting your palate.
Wow.
After a sip of wine, your mouth is clean, meaning your next bite of lobster tastes just as profoundly sweet and impactful as the very first bite.
That makes perfect sense. And what about the champagne?
Oh, champagne is magic.
The sources, especially the Weddizer wedding guides, push champagne heavily. Obviously, there is the celebratory bridal aesthetic.
Right, you have to pop bottles at a wedding.
Popping bottles of bubbly is a given. But chemically, what is the champagne doing to the seafood?
Chemically, it might be the most perfect pairing in the culinary world.
Really?
Yes. Champagne brings acidity, yes. But its superpower is effervescence.
The bubbles.
The carbon dioxide dissolved in the wine creates bubbles. When you drink champagne, those bubbles physically burst on your tongue. They provide a microscopic physical scrubbing action.
Oh, wow. It's like a power washer for your taste buds.
That is exactly what it is. Think about eating a raw, briny oyster. It leaves a heavy, metallic, iodine-rich finish in your mouth.
Right.
If you follow that with a sip of heavy red wine, the tannins in the red wine will clash violently with the iodine.
That sounds awful.
It is. It creates a horrible, metallic, fishy taste. But if you follow that oyster with champagne, the bubbles physically scrub the brine away, while the crisp acidity neutralizes the seawater.
That is amazing.
Your mouth is instantly clean, perfectly prepped for the delicate sweetness of the crab leg that you are going to eat next.
That is brilliant. It's like casting a movie.
How so?
Well, the lobster and the oysters are clearly the A-list stars, right?
Yep.
They are getting top billing on the marquee.
Oh, for sure.
But the crisp Sauvignon Blanc, the champagne, the lemon-infused sparkling water, they are the elite supporting actors. They do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes to make the stars look good without ever stealing the spotlight.
That's a perfect analogy. And that supporting cast extends to the side dishes, too.
Right. Let's talk about the sides.
The sides are strategically deployed to provide extreme contrast.
Give me an example.
If you are eating a chilled lobster roll, the classic pairings are hot, salty French fries or thick-cut potato chips. If you are tackling a massive seafood tower, the accompaniments are usually crisp, fresh green salads, sweet corn on the cob, or a vinegar-based coleslaw.
Let's talk about the temperature and texture contrast there, because the contrast is violent in the best way possible.
It's a sensory wake-up call. Imagine taking a bite of a cold, creamy, soft Maine lobster roll. Everything is yielding, rich, and chilled.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
If your side dish is a cold potato salad, your brain gets bored. The textures and temperatures blur together.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But if you immediately follow that cold, soft bite with a piping hot, rigid, hyper-crispy, heavily salted French fry.
The contrast is explosive.
Yes. The thermal shock of the hot fry against the chilled lobster meat, combined with the textural shock of the crunch against the soft bun, wakes up every single nerve ending in your mouth.
That sounds incredible.
And the same principle applies to a sharp, acidic,